Hey guys, welcome to another new video, and today, Anime Talks will be explaining the anime series called Classroom of the Elite. The story starts with a boy named Kiyotaka Ayanokōji began attending school in Class 1D at the Tokyo Metropolitan Advanced Nurturing High School, an institution established by the government for training Japan's best students. Class D's homeroom teacher C. Chabashira explains the point system where everybody gets a monthly allowance of 100,000 points to use as money at local shops, with 1 point equaling 1 yen. It also warns the students that they are judged on merit. Kiyotaka begins navigating the system by being careful about how he spends his points and then attempting to make peace with his aloof class fellow Suzune Horikita. To help Kushida become friends with Horikita, Kiyotaka brings her to a cafe where only girls meet, having secretly arranged for Kushida and 2 other classmates to be there. However, Horikita sees through the plan and leaves disgustedly. As April passes, most Class D lavishly spends their points and slacks off in class without any reprimand, causing Kiyotaka to be suspicious. On May 1st, the Class D students are surprised to find out that they did not get any allowance, and Chabashira explains that their allowance depends on merit. Having ignored their studies, the class receives no points for the month. Chabashira explains how the system works at this school. The 4 first-year classes are all ranked by merit, and Class D has the opportunity to be promoted to Class C with strong performances on exams. She also warns that anybody who fails one more exam will be expelled from the current situation. Now fully aware of the system, everybody takes their studies more seriously except for the 3 biggest idiots in the class: Ken Sudo, Kenji Ike, and Haruki Yamachi. Horikita treats Kiyotaka to an expensive lunch to discuss these matters and asks his help in bringing those 3 idiots aboard her study group in the library. Kiyotaka and Kushida succeed in getting them to come. Still, they leave immediately because of Horikita's behavior, while Sudo lets everybody know that he wants to play pro basketball, so he has no interest in his studies. That night, Kiyotaka overhears Horikita talking to her brother, the student council president, Manabu, and Manabu attack her over a disagreement about her misplaced view that isolation is independence. Kiyotaka intervenes, and Manabu then reveals that he scored a 50 on every test and asks if it was a coincidence or not. The midterm exams come, and Class D performs very well, with some scoring the highest among the first years in the school. Class D gets the results of their last exam, and everybody passes except for Sudo, who missed the passing threshold by 1 point. The grades resulted from Kiyotaka spending 15,000 points to buy old exam questions from an upperclassman 3 days before the exams. He explains that none of this is against school rules. Later, Kiyotaka approaches Chabashira, asking her whether equality exists, and she answers that it does not, and Kiyotaka agrees. Kiyotaka and Horikita then spend their points to increase Sudo's test score by 1 point so that his expulsion can be rescinded. That night, Kushida organizes a little party in Kiyotaka's room. After the party, Kushida leaves but forgets her cell phone, and Kiyotaka follows her to return it, but in the process, ends up finding out about the jealous, nasty, and irascible side of her personality. Having discovered her secret personality, Kushida demands Kiyotaka to keep it a secret, or else she will accuse him of raping her by having him forcefully touch her breast and using the fingerprints as evidence. July 1st arrives, and Class D's point distribution is put on hold due to an incident the previous day involving Sudo and 3 basketball teammates from Class C. Sudo was attacked and fought back in self-defense. However, due to his poor reputation, he will be held liable unless the class can find a witness to clear his name before the hearing next week, which would consequently result in the class receiving no points for the month. The 3 Class C attackers secretly request classmate Kakeru Ruin to beat them up to manipulate the case in their favor. With the help of Class B, the Class D students post messages asking for witnesses of the incident. Horikita tells Kiyotaka and the others that Eri Sakura was there and witnessed the incident with her camera. That night, Kiyotaka and Kushida discuss how in a murder case, if one of the suspects is a known murderer while the other is a law-abiding citizen, if there is a lack of evidence, people are more likely going to believe the law-abiding citizen even if they are guilty. The next day, Sakura is approached for the evidence, and she runs away, dropping her camera in the process. Sakura freaks out when she cannot turn on her camera, thinking that she broke it, and continues running, not wanting to get involved. Sakura asks Kiyotaka and Kushida to accompany her to the electronics store to get the camera repaired, which is covered under the warranty. The store clerk asks Sakura to give out her contact information, and Kiyotaka gives his information instead. Kiyotaka figures out that Sakura is the internet model that has become a big hit recently. At the hearing presided by Manabu Horikita, both classes give their testimonies accusing each other of instigating the fight, with the initial ruling going in Class C's favor. After staying silent, Suzune speaks up after getting tickled by Kiyotaka. Suzune asks what the circumstances were for the fight and points out that in a 3-against-1 fight, it is nearly impossible for injuries that serious to be all Sudo's doing. She then presents Sakura as a witness, providing evidence that she was present as she captured the fight going on in the background during a photo shoot. However, the evidence only proves that she was present and did not clear Sudo of any wrongdoing. The Class C homeroom teacher Sakagami proposes a compromise to suspend Sudo for 2 weeks and the 3 Class C students for 1 week each, but Class D rejects it. Realizing that one side is clearly lying, Manabu ends the hearing, saying he will announce his decision the next day unless admissions or additional evidence is presented. He also mentions that he could expel students as a result. Sakura returns to her dorm to find her mailbox stuffed with photos of her. Taking advantage of the delay in the final ruling that was made possible with Sakura's photo, Kiyotaka and Horikita set up a trap at the stairwell. Kushida sends a fake message to the 3 Class C students ordering them to meet her at the special annex, in order to draw them to the stairwell where Kiyotaka and Horikita are waiting, and security cameras purchased by Ikanos are secretly installed. This helps them trick the Class C students into believing that neither side stands to gain by going forward with this complaint, and that the 3 students stand to get expelled because they told a malicious lie that got the school involved. As a result, the Class C students agree to withdraw the complaint. Afterward, Sakura gets assaulted by the electronics store clerk, who is a big fan of her net alter ego, Shizuku, and Kiyotaka and Ikanos arrive to save her using the tracking feature in their phones and the security cameras to arrest the clerk. Chabashira and Suzune Horikita discuss Kiyotaka, where Chabashira mentions Class D is a place for defectives in the school, and Kiyotaka is the most defective of all, in her opinion. Manabu approaches Kiyotaka asking him to join the student council, but he refuses while deferring the credit for settling the case to Suzune. Kiyotaka then tells Suzune that while he is willing to help Horikita reach Class A, she should not pry into his life. Horikita continues to study inside her dorm room through summer vacation. Kiyotaka repeatedly calls her, asking her to go to the pool, and she reluctantly agrees. On the night before, a group of Class D students consisting of Kiyotaka, Sudo, Ike, Yamachi, and the operation leader Hideo Satomura meets up to discuss preparations for peeping on the girls inside the changing room at the pool. During the trip to the pool, Satomura observes the boys from the school's general storehouse while communicating with the boys using a transceiver and hand signals. After everybody has changed into their swimsuits, Yamachi sneaks into the women's changing room as a janitor to secretly install the cameras after closing them for cleaning. However, he has trouble doing it, forcing Ike to go in instead. Ruin and students from Class C approach the changing room while Ike is still in, needing help to escape. Sudo comes to the changing room entrance to confront Ruin to stall for time while students from Class A arrive to start a fight. Manabu arrives to remind everybody that they are still being judged as long as they are on school grounds. With Satomura alerting Kiyotaka about the situation, Kiyotaka asks Horikita to stand on top of a diving platform to give a speech about Class D ascending to Class A someday despite the students' numerous defects. With the students distracted, Ike escapes the changing room unnoticed. Shortly afterward, Suzune goes into the changing room to remove the SD cards from the cameras to foil the operation. Kiyotaka explains to Suzune that he used her rather than convince his classmates not to do it because of the possibility that they would have done this behind his back. All the first-year students are taken on a luxurious cruise ship for a class trip. Kiyotaka finds out from Chabashira that an unknown man had contacted the school asking for him to be expelled. Chabashira offers to cover for him to reach Class A. Suspecting that she may be manipulating him, he refuses, but she warns him that he will be expelled and stripped of his freedom if he does. Later, Kiyotaka meets with Horikita to discuss the trip's destination. Kiyotaka explains that he suspects the school is taking them to a boarding house on an island owned by the school for an ulterior motive. Ruin approaches Horikita about the security camera setup, and he tries to manipulate her. Another student from Class C, Ibuki, tries to confront Ruin about something but is violently rebuffed by Albert. Horikita remarks that Class C could be on the verge of collapsing from the inside. Sakayanagi is seen plotting in the background while trying to investigate some students. Later, Sakura calls out Kiyotaka to ask him out on a date but suddenly changes her mind when he goes to meet her. When Kushida sees them together, Sakura is embarrassed and leaves. Kiyotaka tries to leave but is stopped by Kushida when she reverts to her darker personality. She tells him that she could sense his wariness toward her, which he confirms. She then switches back to her cheerful personality and confesses that she feels lonely when left alone. The next day, the school informs all the students of the real reason behind the trip. They must take a survival test on a deserted island for a week. Yasukurada explains from the manual how the survival test works. The class gets 300 test points to spend on food and other conveniences, and whatever remains at the end of the week can be exchanged for class points. The class loses test points for injuries, polluting the environment, missing roll calls, and violence towards students in other classes. While Class D is determined to tough it out, the girls feel the need to have a portable toilet. The argument aside, Class D is determined to save up points. The splits up looking for a camping spot, and Kiyotaka is paired with Sakura and Rokusuke Konji. Kiyotaka loses sight of Konji while he and Sakura look for a spot to secure, recalling what Chabashira said about possessing a spot, in that only the designated class leader can do it. And each possession that lasts for 8 hours gets the team one special test point that is only redeemable for class points. Also, by risking 50 test points, the class can guess who the leader from another class is. While looking for a spot, Kiyotaka sees Koei Katsuragi holding the leader card while talking with classmate Yahiko Tatsuka. Class D reconvenes and sets up camp at a spot by the river. Horikita is chosen to be the leader for being responsible and not standing out. While gathering firewood, Kiyotaka, Yamachi, and Sakura find Mio Ibuki from Class C injured, and Kushida decides to give her some of the fruit his classmates found. The class plans a strategy for spending their points as they set a limit of 180 points to buy 2 meals a day, a toilet, a tent, and 30 for unforeseen situations. However, the class suffers a setback when Konji withdraws despite not feeling ill as he claims he is, costing Class D 30 points. Kiyotaka and Horikita go to inspect the situation at the other camps. Class B's camp is set up near a waterfall and operates much like Class D's camp but at a better location. Class A's base is in a cave that is heavily guarded. Horikita attempts to take a peek, but she is turned away when Katsuragi summons his security force and warns her that her actions might start a war. Class C's camp is on a beach where, under Ryuen's leadership, all of the points have already been spent, and the class treats this test like a vacation. Ryuen did this knowing that they would not be penalized if they had spent all of their test points beforehand. Ryuen punished Ibuki for being disobedient and critical of his leadership. On the night of the third day, somebody breaks into the girls' tent at the Class D camp and searches Ibuki's bag for her phone. Class D does more surveys on the fourth day to find out who the class leaders are. Kiyotaka and Sakura meet Ikanos at Class C's camp only to discover that everybody except Ibuki has withdrawn from the test. On the fifth day, Keikaru Izawa finds out her underwear was stolen. Class D conducts a bag search, and Yamachi finds it in Ike's bag. Kiyotaka takes it, but then the girls demand a pat-down. When the pat-down investigation is conducted, Harada searches Kiyotaka but reports that he couldn't find it. Later he talks with Kiyotaka and decides to take the underwear, knowing that his reputation would be damaged the least for being the culprit because Karu Izawa is his girlfriend. In response to the underwear theft incident, trust within Class D erodes, and the girls of Class D decide to separate the boys and girls camps. Ibuki approaches Kiyotaka, asking his opinion about who the thief is, and he trusts her while telling her that Sudo suspects her. That night, Horikita and Kiyotaka sit by a campfire, and Kiyotaka notices that Horikita has been sick during the entire test. Horikita had been resting in her room during the cruise to recover from her illness, and was determined to tough it out. On the next day, Class D gathers food in advance of a rainstorm. While fishing in the river, Kiyotaka asks Horikita to show him her leader card to confirm whether the card Katsuragi was holding is real. However, he is still unsure after seeing it. Yamachi approaches Horikita and puts mud on her hair, prompting Horikita to throw him to the ground. While Horikita goes off to wash the mud off her hair, somebody steals her leader card, and she secretly lets Kiyotaka know about it. Shortly afterward, somebody starts a fire at the camp, burning the survival test manual, leading to even more trust issues within Class D. Suspecting that this was Ibuki's doing, because she is from another class, Horikita searches for her and finds out that she stole the card. Ibuki attacks Horikita despite the rules prohibiting violence against students from other classes, knowing that she can get away with it as long as nobody witnesses the fight. Weakened by her illness, Horikita is easily beaten by Ibuki, and brings the key card to some mysterious student who had asked for it. Ibuki notifies Katsuragi through a ham radio that she has secured Horikita's leader card, as Class A and Class C are revealed to be working together. With Horikita's illness getting worse, Kiyotaka has her withdraw from the test. On the final day, the students clean up their campground, and the classes guess the leaders, with Class B opting not to make any guesses. At the assembly, Ryuen reveals that he secretly forged a pact with Katsuragi to transfer 200 test points to Class A in exchange for either the leader card or a photo of it. Class C quickly spent the remaining 100 points, and everybody except for Ryuen, Ibuki, and Kanda, the last of whom was assigned to spy on Class B, withdrew from the test. Class C would then guess the leaders, Totsuka for Class A, Chihiro Shiranami for Class B, and Horikita for Class D. The results are revealed, and the winner is Class D with 225 points, followed by Class B with 140 points, Class A with 120 points, and Class C with 0 points. The students return to the cruise ship, where Arisu Sakayanagi reveals that things went according to plan, making everybody mistrust Katsuragi to weaken his leverage over the class as her ally. Hashimoto secretly outed Class A's leader to Ryuen. Kiyotaka explains to Horikita that he intentionally led Ibuki to steal the card. Then he had Horikita withdraw to make himself the leader, ensuring that Class A and Class C incorrectly guessed her as the leader. As for guessing the other leaders, he reveals that he only saw the backside of Katsuragi's card. And knowing how cautious he was, he deduced that Totsuka was Class A's leader. He also was aware that Ryuen had not withdrawn, leading him to guess him as Class C's leader as he saw him with the same radio Ibuki was holding. Not wanting to jeopardize Class D's alliance with Class B, Kiyotaka opted not to name Class B's leader. Ryuen reveals that the main motivation for the alliance with Class A was he would sign a contract to receive 20,000 points from each student of Class A every month until graduation. In a meeting with Chabashira, Kiyotaka finds out from her that the man who wanted him expelled was his father. Kiyotaka tells Chabashira that he will continue to defy him despite his father's attempts to remove him from school. Having told Horikita that she needs allies, Kiyotaka makes it appear that she was responsible for Class D's victory to have others put their trust in her. However, Kiyotaka honestly does not want anything to do with Horikita or anyone in his class. He only sees them, and humans in general, as tools and will continue to use and sacrifice others as long as he wins.